another episode with Harsha, CEO of K-Tech Labs, for another cybersecurity talk. Hey, Harsha, how are you?
Hi, Satish. I'm good. Thank you.
Good. So last time we talked about BACnet, I learned so much. So did our viewers, and we had some really good comments from people that knew what it was but didn't know how to ask the questions. And so today we're going to tackle something similar, right? Something everybody knows about, but they might not know how to ask the right questions. Okay. The big hot topic today, guys, is sensors. Sensors that are everywhere in a building. So let's start with like, what is a sensor?
Well, sensor is you can think of any computer that takes input and gives output. So, like your temperature sensor, it measures your temperature and converts it into electrical signal and gives you the output. What's the temperature? So
So
that's the most simplified version of what is a sensor.
So give us a couple of more examples. I'm in a building, and sometimes you don't see the things right in front of you, right? So give us a few more examples of common sensors that we just take for granted.
So buildings, we have seen so much use of sensors in a building, and for simple reasons like to achieve operational efficiency and environmental reasons. So buildings, you find so many sensors: occupancy sensor, motion sensors. Then there are these consumable sensors that detects how much any item is consumed. Then you have your smoke sensor, fire detection sensor, so many sensors. And the simple motion sensor, the we started using the motion sensor in a building for intrusion detection for
Mm,
physical security purpose. But now buildings have started to use this sensor in combination with your building automation system, your HVAC, and using the data to automatically control heating and cooling. Lately, we have also seen the use of data from motion sensor and occupancy sensor to understand how best rooms and spaces are being used.
interesting, interesting. Um, so we know what sensors are. We kind of know what they're doing, with the sensors. And then you talked a little bit about the data from the sensors being used for different situations. But why does all this matter in cybersecurity?
So yes, because we are connecting sensors with internet, we cannot avoid the use of sensors. But one thing that we can do is, with best practices, we can minimize the impact of cyber threat. Like
Mm,
sensors are connected, but we can still minimize the impact of getting hacked. But to start with, what are the best practices? First, I would like to address what are the vulnerabilities that we need to address.
right.
So I would categorize as two. One is the design vulnerability that arises from how the sensor is designed. What is the chipset used? What is the technology used? What is the protocol used? How the code is written? Are there enough security measures being taken care when the device was developed?
Mm,
So, in order to consider this vulnerability, we need to make sure to pick the right device,
right.
pick the right technology, ask these questions with your vendor. What are the technologies being used? What is the protocol? Simple things like if you have to do a firmware update, like if you have to update the device, is that process secure? How easy it is to maintain and update the device? The second vulnerability is the deployment vulnerability. Even though the device is secure, but if the device is not implemented or deployed in a proper or right manner, then it leads to deployment vulnerability and still makes the device hackable.
Mm,
So whoever is your integrator, or is if your vendor or the provider is your integrator, or you are hiring a third party to deploy the devices, then make sure they are following the right practices when they are deploying the device. Like once the device is deployed, remove these default passwords because they are only being used at the deployment time.
right, right.
Change the password. Make sure you have a separate network. Do not plug in these sensors or these devices with your corporate
Same.
network or with the network on which your building automation system is there. Make sure you have a separate network for these devices. plus whoever is your integrator and you have a maintenance contract with your integrator, then they need to follow the process of regularly maintaining and updating these devices. So if
Right,
there is
right.
a patch released, update the device. Look for signs of device hacking. So these are the ways we can mitigate the risk associated with the deployment vulnerabilities.
Is there just to close the loop for everybody, and I know you have lots of examples, but is there one example that pops to you, Brian, on a sensor being vulnerable that was used as a hack?
Oh, yes. I'll not dive into details on where and when it happened, but we deployed indoor location solution in one of the building, and the device was using Bluetooth, the BLE beacons to tell you the location on as where the person is in the building. So the Bluetooth, the beacon was deployed, but the integrator then turned on. So there's a functionality in Bluetooth beacon where you can turn on automatic shuffling of the UID. Whereas the beacon changes its UID, that's the ID to identify the beacon.
Right,
So if you shuffle the UID, it's hard for hacker to trace the UID and replicate the device. So the integrator failed to turn on that functionality. We were testing the system and we found that we are connecting with the device, but the device is not responding. Then
oh,
on troubleshooting, we found that someone hacked into and replicated the UID and placed a rogue device in the system. And every time my mobile was connecting to that rogue device. But we were safe because that the testing and the troubleshooting was going on. So we caught this error at a very early stage. So yes,
wow.
so simple things
Something.
like, yeah, so this was not the case of a design vulnerability. It was the case of the deployment vulnerability where the hacker failed to turn on the security features during the deployment time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So if you guys enjoyed this little episode, make sure to follow Hersha, follow K-Tech Labs, and every single week we're going to bring out these little micro doses of cybersecurity content so that the questions you're afraid to ask or not sure how to ask, we can push it forward for you. And feel free to get in touch with either of us. If cybersecurity is something you're interested in learning more about, if you got a building that we can help secure, or if you're just wanting to have a chat with a very smart person, Hersha, and then I can probably tag along and listen. Thank you for watching. This has been another cybersecurity episode with K Tech Labs, Hersha, and Satish. Thank you, Hersha.
Thank you. Bye.